So I know this is a long one, but if this game is important to you or something you're actually thinking about getting, please stay to the end or skip to like that 8-minute mark because there's some very important information about this game that I don't talk about until then. I hate starting off on a negative, so that's why I saved it to the last part of the video, but I didn't realize how long the video was going to be. So honestly, this was a really difficult review for me to do. In many ways, this game is like a tale of two worlds. There's a really good aspect and then a very negative aspect. Now, I'm definitely going to start off on a good foot, so to speak, and so I will get to that negative stuff as we go on. But before we get into that, I do want to ask you guys to please hit that like, subscribe, and turn the notification bell on because we have a lot of videos coming out. We got The Cub, Turnip Boy Robs a Bank, and a few others I can't even talk about. So you don't want to miss any of those reviews. But let's get started with Rising Lords. So this game is a combination of some things I really love. Turn-based combat, also real-time strategy, resource management, empire building, and elements of board games as well. And the mode that I played the most was basically a first player mode or scenario mode. And in this, you can pretty much set the parameters of the battle. Everything from how many people compete to the world map itself, how many resources you start off with. And I have to say, it was impressive how many maps there were available. There's quite a few, and they all kind of depend how big they are on how many players can play. But I basically started with like just having 4 other players, like a relatively big map, and just the default settings when it came to resources. I really just wanted a good, solid experience, and for the most part, you were started with a completely blank slate. You essentially just have like your town square, which is where your population is produced, or peasants as they're called in the game. And the first thing that you want to do is to cultivate the land. You want to farm, and everything is set up in like a grid-like structure. Now, there's only so many areas that you can farm on. They're pretty much already determined for you, or there might be an area where it's overgrown and you have to have someone pretty much like dig out the waste of it to be able to farm on it. But anyway, these areas is the only place you can grow crops or take care of livestock. So you want to really balance out how you're going to do that, especially if you want to get to a point where you have horses. Pretty much start off with just some farmland for crops and for sheep. That's your main 2 resources when you start. You'll also have access to like mines and forest areas for you to collect wood. But you essentially go from here is you try to stack everything up. You build a castle, of course, dwellings, things of that nature. And in the entire time, you're just keeping track of your people. You want to make sure you're making them happy and that they're healthy. So you continue to get more people so you can continue to build more things and to grow your empire. At some point, you finally decide that, hey, you know what? We're looking pretty good. We got a bathhouse, we have an inn, we have all sorts of good stuff. Let's go conquer more land. And that is when you build an army. And don't make the mistake that I did my first go round when I just made an army without really making any weapons. So you definitely want to have a smith and build up quite a few weapons so you can arm your army as you go forth and conquer the world, so to speak. Well, even this, though, does come with quite a bit of upkeep because, for one, your peasants, your people, are not so happy to go in to join the military. And so this also causes some happiness to go down, contentness, if you will. And then also money. It takes a lot of money to fund an army. But this is going to be the only way that you're able to grow. You have to go and fight other territories, most of them owned by the quote-unquote people who are not actually under anyone's rule. And this is really where the game in many ways is won, because if you can get enough of these before you run into an actual army or another lord or emperor, then you have more area, you have more resources, you're going to do better. Now, the battlefield is one of my favorite places. You see, you get to actually set your troops up how you want to, like where you want to. And this really does matter. If you have archers, make sure you give them elevation. A lot of times you want to put most of your knights or your sword fighters in like wooded areas so that they're not as susceptible to being hit by arrows, and they also have better defense. You're also given a few cards that can either be buffs for you or debuffs for your enemy. Unfortunately, they don't make that much of a difference. In fact, sadly, a lot of things don't really make that much difference when it's on the battlefield. You see, if if you just have enough knights or swordsmen against a lesser number, even more of a lesser unit, there's not a lot of ways to turn the tide of a battle in this game, and there's definitely not a lot of ways to come from behind, or even just like when you're beat as soon as you step on the battlefield. And that sort of stinks. Like, there will be no 300 moment in this game. It's essentially just set up on who has the most of the superior units and how quickly they can blast through the weaker units or those of lesser number. Like, I get it, because in reality, that's pretty much how it breaks down. And if you go into a battle with the higher number of better units and you lose, you think, well, that's not fair. But that's where I'd expect the cards to come in to kind of, play off of that a little bit, or to just give a little bit of a difference. And they really don't. As well as certain other units like archers, for instance. I had set up a whole wall of archers and it still just got demolished by a lesser amount of swordsmen. And you're thinking, at least I'm thinking, that if you're shooting a bunch of arrows, that would slow down the other enemies coming at you, but apparently not. And it's just things like this that kind of are bothersome. It's not horrible. It's just you already know how to either win or that you're gonna lose. And it is what it is. Because most of the game after the battling is almost kind of like that as well. The resources, it's not very deep. Like, you just have the same resources amongst a larger area as you expand your empire. You want to watch your crops, your livestock, give your people beer every now and then, make sure you're building stuff. Just keep those numbers up and you're good. There aren't many events that actually affect anything. Like, even if you have a fire in your village or a bear attacks or something, it's really not that big of a deal. In fact, most of it is just a text telling you, hey, some bad stuff happened, don't worry about it. And that's it. Like, you would think there would be some major implications to like a fire, especially back then. But also, my other issue is just like diplomacy. There is no diplomacy at all. And I could see using this in many different ways, like being able to talk to some of the unruled people and doing like a proxy war. Things like that, having saboteurs or spies, it would just really shake things up a little bit. Not to mention, I would like to see a little bit more in the realm of like resources changing up, education, maybe culture, religion, that kind of thing, giving you different boons or different units and just different ways to play off of your enemies. Now, I get it that this game is probably more Settlers of Catan than it is Civilization, but I think it could borrow a little bit from Civilization. Now, I'm not going to act like it's completely devoid of anything interesting or new, because honestly, one of my favorite tactics was becoming an arms dealer. You see, there's a merchant in this game that travels from town to town, and you can buy things from him or sell things. I ended up just building a bunch of smiths and making a lot of weapons and then selling them to a point that I could just fund a gigantic army. And that was really fun. I liked the idea of being able to come up with different ways to win in this game. And I thought like that was really cool that they allowed something like that, something outside of the box. Now, if you've noticed, I haven't really spoken about the story, the campaign. And there's a reason for that. And by the way, this is the bad rule. This is the bad element. The other stuff that I was kind of talking about as far as gameplay and combat, I wish they could tweak that, maybe change things up a little bit, add a little bit, and I don't know, I hope they do. But for me, this is where the game really goes wrong. You see, I don't know much about the story, aside from the fact that you're a young lord who's forced into being the head of your empire, your family, and your group, and you're leading them. And the reason why is because this game crashed on me multiple times. And I'm not talking like 4 or 5 times. No, like this game crashed every time I pretty much played the campaign. I would get to a certain point and it would crash. And it would take me back to a certain point. And I'd end up playing the same area over and over. And this isn't really giving anything away, but it's this part where you decide if you're going to look in on this old woman's amulet that's like hanging on her house. And during the beginning phase of a mission called For Honor. And this just happened over and over. And I swear I saved many points after this, and still every time the game crashed, it would take me right back to the same spot. And so I really just got frustrated and felt like I'm kind of wasting my time. So I spent most of my time playing the scenario mode or the single player mode, where I'm going to be honest, it did not perform that great either. Every time a turn would happen, the game would get super, super laggy, and I would get very nervous because I was like, oh no, it's going to freeze again. And that's what would happen, not in the scenario mode or the single player mode, but in the tutorial. It would get really laggy, and then it would just freeze. Like the screen would just freeze. There was no like crash code or anything like that. It's just the screen would just stay there. And I would sit there and I would wait for 5 or 10 minutes, and nothing would happen. And so I just was forced to turn it off. then it sucks, honestly, because I know it may not seem like it, but I really like this game. I really like the foundation. I think there is so much to this game, and I can't wait to see what they do, and I hope they continue working on it. I hope that there's an update. I'll be more than willing. In fact, if there is a big update, I will do another video, just kind of like a patched up video, talking about how it's changed and how it's, better and different. I hope that happens because it is kind of rare to find one of these type of games on the Switch, and I think that this is definitely like a passion project. The team behind this worked their butts off on it, and you can tell. I mean, the artwork, the hand-drawn style artwork is wonderful. It, for me, captures the entire environment of that medieval time. And honestly, if they could just get it to a point where you could get through the campaign, I wouldn't even care that much about the lagginess when each turn is passed. And even the tweaks on the gameplay, there's just things I would like to see happen, but I still think it's a really good game if not. But just this crashing, or this freezing, I should say, is such an issue that I can't give it a good score, and it hurts. It really does. Because again, I like so much about this game. I want it to be better than what I have in front of me right now. I want there to be this great patch that comes out and fixes it, and I can not worry about the game freezing, or more importantly, telling you not to worry about the game freezing. And that is where I guess I have to give this game a 4 out of 10. I wish I could give it higher, I really do. And I say this only because I don't want people to buy it and then to blame me. Hey, you gave it a good score. Well, I gave it a good score based on the potential of what I think it might be, of what I hope that they'll put the work into, but I can't completely guarantee that's going to happen. I haven't heard they're going to come out with a patch, and I don't know how funding is. I don't know anything. You know what I'm saying? So I just have to say that right now it is like at best a 4 out of 10, and that hurts. But anyway, let me know what your guys' thoughts are. If this is something you're interested in, do you like these style of games? Let me know your thoughts. Anything and everything down in the comment section is very much appreciated. I love each and every one of you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.